is going to be a Hindu article related to the first question in GS paper 1 of the mains CSE 2024, which is underline the changes in the field of society and economy from the Rig Vedic to the later Vedic period, to be answered in 150 words for 10 marks. The article is dated the 7th of May 2024, a Tuesday, and titled The 4,600-Year-Old Woman from Rakhigarhi. The DNA study of a skeleton from the archaeological excavation site in Haryana has opened a Pandora's box on genomics, history, archaeology, and linguistics. The findings, which will be in a school textbook, have reignited the Aryan question and opened a new frontier on whether the Harappan and Vedic cultures are synonymous, finds Sri Barna Chakrabarti. And the article goes, roughly 150 kilometers from Delhi, the national capital, down the Delhi-Sirsa highway, a meandering road leads to the twin villages of Rakhi Shahpur and Rakhi Khas in Haryana's Hisar district. The narrow, dusty road, typically of a small town India, belies the importance of the place to which it leads, the archaeological site of Rakhigarhi. A plaque here reads that it is the largest site of the Harappan culture. 99 years after it was discovered, the findings have raised questions about history and identity. Mount 7 of the excavation site, that extends across 3.5 square kilometers or 350 hectares, has been identified as a burial plot from which 56 skeletons were recovered. Of these, a woman's, roughly 4,600 years old, has created a buzz among those who work in history, anthropology, genomics, and linguistics. The DNA analysis of the skeleton says the individual we sequenced fits as a mixture of people related to ancient Iranians, the largest component, and Southeast Asian hunter-gatherers, as per Cell. It also says that there was no steppe pastoral gene, that is, from people in Central Asia, in the Rakhigarhi women. The word Aryan has been interchangeably used for the steppe pastoralists, since we cannot say any time frame. Though, to avoid racial connotations, many scholars now prefer to use the term Indo-Aryan for this group of people. This finding has fanned the debate on the so-called Aryan migration to India, part of the history books of many generations of Indians. Quickly, the body that oversees educational aids, the NCERT or National Council of Educational Research and Training, sent out a document to incorporate the developments in the next academic year's Class 12 History textbook, Themes in Indian History Part 1, under the chapter Bricks, Beads and Bones, the Harappan Civilization. The DNA of the Harappans has continued till today, and a majority of the South Asian population appear to be their descendants. Due to trade and cultural contacts of the Harappans with the distant regions, there is a mixture of genes in small quantities. The continuity, without any break in genetic history as well as cultural history, rules out large-scale immigration of the so-called Aryans, the NCERT textbook aim for 2024-25 has stated. There is also a picture of the excavation showing the mature Harappan phase in Rakhigarhi. Back to the article. There is a difference of opinion among scientists, with one set associated with the project saying that the skeleton does indeed represent a continuity in history, meaning that the Harappan and Vedic cultures were both indigenous and not alien. Another set of historians say that the Harappan civilization and those who wrote the Vedas were two different people. Next part of the article is Archaeological Survey of India on ground. The findings were first published in two papers in 2019. One in the peer-reviewed journal Cell, named An Ancient Harappan Genome Lacks Ancestry from Steppe Pastoralis or Iranian Farmers, co-authored by 28 scientists, and the other, The Formation of Human Populations in South and Central Asia in Science, a 124-year-old publication. Unlike most scientific discoveries restricted to a geeky bunch of professionals, these studies have generated an interest in the excavation work. The on-site team of the ASI, or Archaeological Survey of India, that aims to protect, conserve and discover the country's intangible and tangible heritage, says after the study results were published, The number of lay people showing up to see the work they are doing is now between 100 and 150 daily. The curious include students from schools and colleges from Delhi, UP, that is Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan, and number of foreign visitors. At Rakhigarhi, the professional Sanjay Manjul, chief archaeologist and head of the ASI team working on site, is excited. Unperturbed by Haryana's dry afternoon heat, Manjul walks from the mount to mount, describing in detail what each one has thrown up so far. He talks about the mature urban planning, the clean structures of the houses, and the organized drainage systems. He also points out cultural cues like fire altars and sacrificial pits and the presence of animal figurines, bulls, pigs, tigers. Other antiquities include a variety of terracotta toys and jewelry, shells and stone ornaments, stone and copper tools, and implements including church blades, fluted cores, copper arrowheads, bone points, beads of semi-precious stones, and other terracotta objects, he says. There is also his picture in the article. Next paragraph. On ground, the dig site is like something out of a movie. There are the dusty mounds, about 15 workers digging, and a few ASI archaeologists supervising with the campsite, where everyone including Manjul lives. There is nothing else around. The people of Rakhigarhi are delighted that their town is important. Villagers show the way to the site with excitement. A former village sarpanch says he hopes that when the museum is complete, residents of his village will get employment. Mound 1, which has been identified as a center of industrial activity throughout the various phases of excavation here, includes evidence of a kiln for pottery production and tools for a lapidary industry. Lapidary industry is related to polishing of stones and gems. So, the article goes on to say, Mound 1, which has been identified as a center for industrial activity throughout the various phases of excavation here, includes evidence of a kiln for pottery production and tools for a lapidary industry or gem polishing industry for semi-precious stones. Remains of sun-dried unbaked bricks for homes and burned brick drains along with the fire altar have also been found. Mound 2, located in the southwest, appears to have a 14-meter high citadel, a large podium, 2 sacrificial pit chambers, a granary, a market complex, house complexes, and 2 deep wells. Way back in 1915, the Survey of India, ASI's precursor, first documented a peculiar mound across the landscape of Rakhigarhi. The site was first added to the archaeological data in 1968 and 69 and has been a subject to excavation by ASI between 1997 and 2000 and by the Deccan College of PG or Postgraduate Research Institute in collab with the State Archaeological Department of Haryana between 2011 and 16. The excavated material is with the Haryana State Archaeological Department, which the ASI says will soon be part of a museum they are building at the site. According to Manjul, cultural continuity is established through all these excavations, even if scientists set aside the DNA findings. A whole lot of these remains can be correlated with the Vedic culture, like the fire altars and sacrificial pits, he says. Next part of the article, some scientists say yes. What is that about? Neeraj Rai, scientist with the Birbal Sani Institute of Paleosciences, as you know, paleo relates to fossils, paleosciences, was one of the lead authors in the 2 genome projects. He says it is true that Harappan ancestry is present in most populations of India, but he also says that at present the local population of Rakhigarhi and most Indian populations have a significant part of the steppe DNA in their genetic composition, sometimes up to 20%. The summary of the Cell article, of which Rai is a lead author, says these individuals, that is the Harappans, had little, if any, steppe pastoralist related ancestry, showing that it was not ubiquitous in Northwest South Asia during the Indus Valley Civilization as it is today. Ubiquitous means found everywhere. According to Rai, this is because some migration took place from the steppe region after 1500 BCE and until about 500 BCE. These people intermingled with the local populations. Both papers stated that steppe pastorals came to India between 2000 BCE to 1500 BCE. He says the Rakhigarhi excavations show a cultural continuity of over 5000 years, though there was a genetic infusion after 1500 BCE. Here, we have a very good evidence of the development of culture from 6000 BCE. This site is very important to understand the early development of Indian culture. This is an assessment archaeologists working on the excavation site agree with. Professor Vasant Shinde, former Vice Chancellor of Deccan College, University of Pune, who led some of the most important excavation work here, also agrees. There is also a picture of a Harappan houses interspersed with late medieval burials in Rakhigarhi, Haryana. Back to the article. Shinde, who is also a co-author of the cell study, says there are genetic and archaeological indications that the Harappan and Vedic cultures are the same, though more research needs to be done. This Harappa has laid the base of Indian cultural civilization. What we today follow is more or less a Harappan lifestyle. Many knowledge systems and traditions were introduced by the Harappans and have continued for 5000 years. Next part of the article, some scholars say no. The NCERT clarifies in the textbook that more research is required on the relationship between Harappans and the Vedic people. The crucial question now is, if Vedic and Harappan cultures are synonymous, how does that explain the development and use of Sanskrit, the language of the Rig Veda, considered the oldest book of Vedic literature and civilization? There is no evidence of the language at the Rakhigarhi site. Historian Romila Thapar, in a book co-authored by several others in 2019, Which of Us Are Aryans, says that the standard chronology of what is called the Vedic period is taken to be roughly from 1500 to 500 BCE. This is the period of the composition of the first Veda, the Rig Veda, and then the later ones, the Sama Veda, Yajur Veda, and finally the Atharva Veda, she goes on to say. The history of this period has become central to a political ideology that insists on the Aryan culture of the Vedas being the foundational culture of India and of the Aryans therefore being entirely indigenous to the subcontinent and its earlier inhabitants. This is being projected as the popular explanation of how it all began, especially in northern India. However, it tends to be set aside by most historians. According to linguistic scholars, classical Sanskrit has emerged from the Indo-Aryan language, Rig Vedic Sanskrit, in which the text is written. It has been believed until now that it was the steppe migrants who brought in the Indo-Aryan cultures, a subsection of the Indo-Iranian branch of the Indo-European language family. Though the paper and cell says the natural path for the spread of the Indo-European languages from which Sanskrit originates was through steppe pastorals. Now he contends that there was a need for research to re-look at the origin of the Sanskrit and whether it could also have been indigenous to the Indian subcontinent. Strongly rebuting this, linguist G.N. Devi says that the accounts of evolution of languages are based on the comparative and historical linguistics. They firmly indicate that Sanskrit historically has had no pre-Harappa existence in South Asia. He goes on to say that the claim that the DNA study of Rakhigarhi's skeleton disproves the previously established understanding of the language movement is hasty, far-fetched and agenda-driven rather than a dispassionate scientific analysis. The agenda he refers to is to prove the one nation, one origin theory. There have been many arguments since the publication of the two studies and subsequent interpretations in mass media. In an interview to a coffee table book brought out by The Hindu in 2022, Tony Joseph, the author of the book Early Indians, The Story of Our Ancestors and Where We Came From, says the disconnect between the Harappa civilization and the earliest Sanskrit texts we have, the Rig Veda, is quite striking. The Harappan civilization was a leading urban civilization having substantial trade contacts with other urban civilizations of its time. The milieu of the Rig Veda is pastoral, with many of its verses focusing on how the gods helped the Aryans in their battles with the other pastoral tribes and in acquiring cattle wealth. The horse and the chariot are a dominant imagery in the Rig Veda. But the horse and the chariot are strikingly absent in the Harappan civilization. even as imagery on the thousands of seals it has left behind. As the debate remains open, some scholars feel both arguments could have been put to the students in the NCERT book to show that history and science are not absolutes but evolve with time as further evidence come to light.